Let's stay with the courts. And the South Gauteng High Court has set aside the ANC Ekurhuleni Conference held in May 2022 in Fourways, Johannesburg. It includes all decisions, the resolutions and the election results emanating from that gathering. There were violent disruptions and disputes leading up to, during and following the conference, forcing it to conclude with preliminary results. Disputed branches votes, which were seen as potential swing votes, were quarantined. The preliminary results saw Samkele Maseko narrowly clinch victory against Dr. Xhakaza. A number of applicants subsequently headed to court. All right, so that's the backstory to, or that's the background to this ruling from the South Gauteng High Court, which set aside the Ekhurhukeni National Conference with costs to the ANC. And the question is, could it have implications for its provincial conference outcomes? And Samkele Maseko is our SABC News political reporter. Samkele, good evening to you and welcome. In that, set up to our interview now, there were so many things that had gone wrong. Branches were saying they had been fairly excluded, and you'll see in the judgment itself, it seems that the judge believed that the ANC had flouted, or the ANC's constitution itself was flouted. Just talk us into just the mess surrounding all of this.
A very good afternoon to you, Iman, and to the listeners. Indeed, the South Gauteng High Court found that the ANC in the build-up to its regional conferences, in particular the regional secretary, TK Ngcuza, flouted many of the ANC's processes and ANC's constitution in the build-up to that regional conference, saying that there were a number of discrepancies in the branch nominations and the branch meetings towards that particular Congress, which ultimately elected him or re-elected him as the regional secretary, and Samkele Maseko as the regional chairperson of that particular region, as going as far as to saying also the ANC's provincial conference should have not been held because of the discrepancies that were there of the Ekurhuleni Regional Conference, and ultimately going as far as implicating the National Organizing Office of the ANC, which was then led by Nomvula Mokonyane, saying that they overlooked a number of irregularities that were there with the Ekurhuleni Conference.
So the judgment is also calling into question the lack of following the ANC's constitution. You talked about Nomvula Mokonyane, whose name comes up in this judgment as well, around the deliberate exclusion of some branches, essentially the breaching of fair process. The judge even said the entire lapse in process was so egregious that it evidences a complete disregard for the application of fair process on the part of the National Organizing Committee. Sam, what does it convey about the state of the ANC in the region and in the country then?
It conveys a state of the ANC that's in paralysis, that ANC that is used as voting fodder, an ANC that does not go in line with its own constitution. For instance, let me quote from the judgment on point 186. Attempts to manipulate the votes by Ngcuza under circumstances where he was personally conflicted. Point 187. Regardless of the motivations, it amounted to a maternally unfair process. In circumstances, it cannot be found that the processes leading up to, during, and after the conference were in accordance with the ANC constitution, the constitution or the guidelines. In addition, the procedural and substantive irregularities were material to the outcome of the conference. This court thus has no alternative but to declare the conference and its election results as unlawful and void. I now move to deal with the relief that is in accordance with the circumstances. In essence, the judge is saying that no ANC processes were thoroughly followed. On another point, the ANC allowed the provincial conference to proceed, notwithstanding the clear illegality of the election process at the conference. The provisional nature of the results at the regional conference was in such that it was not constitutional for the provincial conference to be convened. This is inherent in the hierarchical election structure, which lies at the heart of democratic elections. So this speaks exactly to the election of TK Ngcuza as provincial secretary, Wanyaza Lesufi as chairperson, Nomanto Ralulu as deputy. You go to Tazim Mutara as the deputy secretary, and you go to Masioto Morakani as the treasurer. It speaks to them, that provincial conference that elected them at Lakeside, and ultimately, which was concluded at Braithwaite Hotel, was not meant to take place because of the irregularities of the ANC's biggest region in the province of Gauteng, which is Ekurhuleni.
So I guess, the big question, the obvious question now is, so that Ekurhuleni Conference has to be reconvened. What happens next, and what implications does it have for the provincial conference results?
Look, the Ekurhuleni Regional Conference was in any way going to a regional general council, an RGC, where they were going to replace Mzandile Mastina, who's now an NEC member, replace TK Nisa, who's now the provincial secretary. There are 3 officials that are currently there. It is the acting chair, Mzize, it is Moipone Mhlongo, the regional acting regional secretary, and it is Mr. Silva Skoko, the regional treasurer. So the RGC was going to take place in 2 weeks' time. It now places the RGC at harm's risk because ultimately the RGC that was officiating over these branch general meetings for the RGC is an illegitimate structure. So the ANC officials later today and the PEC ultimately have to meet and decide what they do with this particular conundrum that they are placed. Do they place an RTT or do they continue going to an RGC or change the RGC into a regional conference?
Well, Sam, I guess as well, people will be wondering, it was chaotic enough to begin with, so many stops and starts at that conference, what all of this now means, especially in view of the fact that it's back to the drawing board. But we will continue to monitor that through your eyes. Samkele Maseko is our political reporter, to sharing with us some perspective on this ruling now by the South Gauteng High Court.